welcome everybody to today's presentation on creating sustainable growth, regardless of the economic condition. I'm just really glad to have everybody here on with us today. Now, in all the presentations that I've given over the past, say, decade, I will say that today's presentation might be one of the most important yet. So I'm just going to ask you, please pay attention because things are changing and you're probably feeling it. In fact, if you're feeling it, just throw a yes in the chat box. Let me see that you're feeling it and you know what I'm talking about here. Right. So look, without further ado, I know we've got a lot to cover, so let's begin.
So just the other day, my client said to me, "Do you feel it?" And I said, "Feel what?" And they said, "The economy, it's changing, right?" And I instantly knew what she meant. So, we went on to discuss and chat how buyers are taking longer to make decisions, and how they're putting a lot of downward pressure on prices, and overall buyers are being a lot more discerning.
Yeah, and you're right. There's no denying that change is in the air. And our coaching team and I have the unique opportunity to speak with literally hundreds of business owners a month. And we're able to spot things like buyers taking longer to make purchase decisions, price pressures, and behaviors that indicate that something's happening and that buyers are becoming more discerning. And this is further confirmed by a few benchmark indicators. In fact, according to the National Federation of Independent Businesses, also known as the NFIB, business owners remain pessimistic about future economic conditions. This indicator declined to a negative 49%. Now, for perspective, this is the lowest level ever recorded in the 48-year-old survey. And many Wall Street analysts have expressed concerns, and they're calling for a crash. As they said, we're in an unusual time. A 49-year market vet says that we've entered the final stage of the bull market in stocks as the Fed tries to handle inflation, and warns that an 80% crash is ahead. And a quick informal poll that I did in January of this year on LinkedIn, 71% of the people either believe that the economy would be flat or would go down. And these mounting concerns is what prompted TD Ameritrade to bring me on their Market Rally show yesterday, in fact, to talk about the changing economic environment and its impact on small business owners. So look, I'll just put it right out there. You can choose to ignore what we're talking about today. And if you do that, that's on you. Or you can listen to what we have to say with an open mind so that you too can also be ready. And if you're feeling a little concerned, that's okay. Just rest assured that it's not a time for worry. What it is, it's a time to prepare. And dare I say, maybe get a little excited. And I say that because no matter the economic climate, you can still continue to grow and scale your business if you follow some really simple steps. And if you play your cards right, the next few years could actually be the best years for you and your business to date.
So recently there's some big questions I've been hearing from my clients who are, business owners and entrepreneurs. And I'm thinking because you're here, you can probably relate. One of the questions I'm hearing is, what do I need to do or what do I need to know to grow my business faster, even when the economy changes? And what steps do I need to take to increase the predictability of our revenue so we eliminate, roller coaster months? Or how can I take advantage of the next downturn to capture all the opportunities that we're talking about? And spoiler alert, I love a bad economy, and I'll tell you why in a minute.
Yeah, I share that sentiment. But first we have to talk about how your competitors are going to react. And this adds to why we both love a bad economy. But the competitors approach the down economy like Chicken Little. They fear the sky's falling and their business will be, a doomer. But unlike Chicken Little, who runs around screaming the sky is falling, when the market changes, the competition, they react much like a deer in headlights and they freeze. They're staring at the car, hoping that if they just wait long enough, the car is actually going to turn. But anybody know what ends up happening to the deer? Right, right. It gets hit.
And, while many business owners, they may make it through, one quarter of a down economy, the lack of predictability and sustainability will highlight that they're missing out on something which is far more fundamental and necessary. They're missing the ability to scale in a way that their business will grow over the long term, leveraging both present and future opportunities. So in today's presentation, our hope for you is that you're going to walk away embracing the notion that change is inevitable. And rather than being afraid, rather than operating from fear when the market changes, you'll actually get excited for when it comes, and you're going to see it as one of the greatest opportunities for your business.
So in the next few minutes, we're going to show you how to find sustainable growth that's faster than you think, more consistent than you're used to, and not completely dependent on you. So once again, for those who don't know us, my name is Charles Gaudet. I'm the CEO of Predictable Profits, and I'm joined by my co-founder, Stephanie Vaughn. So some real quick.
Sorry.
What's up, Stephanie?
I was just ready to, I'm so excited. I'm just ready to jump in.
I tell you what, why don't you tell everybody the housekeeping?
Yeah, we just got a little housekeeping for you. So here's our agenda. And given the limited time that we have together, we want to give you everything we can. And chances are we're probably not going to have any time for Q&A. So at the end, I'm going to let you know how you can get in touch with us. So if you have any questions, we're going to make time to answer them for you. We promise. And your time is valuable. We really appreciate you giving us 45 minutes of it on a Friday. So to make the most out of our time together, because this is the first time many of us have met, you might find it a little helpful to learn about us and why we just might be uniquely qualified to speak with you today on this topic. My name is, Stephanie Vaughn. I head up the coaching team, and me and our team have been coaching companies for more than 15 years. I previously served as president of coaching for Business Breakthroughs International. It was a company owned by Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes. And I am also one of the co-founders here at Predictable Profits. But for over a decade, I've really had the true privilege of working with, hundreds and hundreds of companies on this very strategy we're going to cover with you today. And, we've impacted, over 300 million in top line revenue. So I'm super excited to get started.
Awesome. And as for myself, my name is Charlie Gaudet. I'm the author of the Predictable Profits Playbook, the host of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast, and I'm also the CEO of Predictable Profits. Now, an article in Yahoo Finance called me the CEO Whisperer, and recently Disrupt Magazine selected me as the top business coach for 7- and 8-figure companies. The International Business Times called me the go-to business coach for 7- and 8-figure companies and a leading voice in the entrepreneurship community when it comes to scaling and growth strategy. And the reason why I've received all this attention for my work comes down to the simple fact that time and time again, we help top entrepreneurs make profits predictable as well as sustainable. And Stephanie and I have experienced 5 major crashes in our lives. There's 1987, when I witnessed my dad go through one, and it was bad. Let me tell you, real bad. I remember the stress on his face and the concerns that he had. And then I experienced the following crashes as an entrepreneur myself: the dot-com crash of 2001, the 2008 housing crisis, and in 2020, the pandemic. Now, I used to look at crashes as something to fear, but after 2008, when you look around, you could always find a business, even in the hardest hit industries, thrive. And while common wisdom wants us to believe that crashes are bad, it's just an economic illusion. Markets are actually neither good nor are they bad, but rather they're different.
Yeah, it's so true. And in the time we have together, we're committed to answering some tough questions. So we're hoping by the end of our time today that you're going to feel confident about the future and how to navigate it and how to navigate uncertainty. If you can't tell already, we're very passionate about arming, business owners and entrepreneurs with solid data and real stories. We want to inspire and inform you. Our goal is to ensure that you have the necessary tools to not only navigate uncertainty, but that you're actually able to create predictable, scalable profits for your company, no matter what the nature of the economy is.
Now, one of my professional role models, Richard Branson. How many knows who this guy is? Right. Richard Branson, founder of the Virgin Group, Virgin Airlines, and all that other stuff. A guy I respect so much that I actually named my firstborn son after him. And he said, in times of recession, there are massive opportunities and fortunes to be made.
And then there's Jack Welch, the former CEO of GE, and he's accepted as one of the best business minds to have ever lived. And he said, never miss out on an opportunity like a great recession. So it might sound counterintuitive, we tend to equate something like a recession with leaner and less profitable times. But Richard and Jack didn't, get to where they were because of a lack of understanding about business. So what is it that they're ultimately talking about? How can we make good on a promise of a great recession? And how can we shift our perspective to be more like theirs and, pretty much less like Chicken Little? So we want to begin to answer these questions. And in order to do that, we get to talk about 2020. And we've all lived through it. We're continuing to adapt to a life that none of us expected. And, I don't want to get bogged down by rehashing the last 2 years. I'm sure none of us want to go there. But what I do want to do is just do a quick rundown of some key takeaways from the international press that share some really interesting statistics that we want to share with you. And what they said was, at the end of the day, the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 had major impacts on small business. We all know that. But the Small Business Trends Survey discovered some unexpected insights into small business ownership. And what they found was that one of the largest impacts of COVID on small business reported was a 19% decrease in the number of profitable businesses from 2019. So only 63% of respondents' businesses were profitable in 2020 compared to 78% in the previous year. However, despite this concerning drop in the number of profitability, 78% of small business owners expect their business to survive through the pandemic, while only 4% expect their businesses to fail. So overall, there's a generally positive outlook in the future among small business owners, despite the pandemic. So when asked how confident they felt about the future of small business post-COVID, 49% of small business owners answered that they were either somewhat confident or very confident, compared to the 34% who were somewhat or very unconfident, and 17% remain neutral. So the highest share in outlook was somewhat confident in small business after the pandemic at around 30%. So this is the global take on the subject. But those that took action similar to what we're discussing today had a different take. In years to come, we will look back on 2020 as the moment that changed everything. Nowhere else has unprecedented and unforeseen growth occurred as in the digital and e-commerce sectors, which boomed amid the COVID-19 crisis. And that was from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development.
So basically, today the world may still be recovering from the pandemic and adapting to new ways of life, but new business habits and behaviors, as Stephanie just mentioned, have already taken hold. And there are few rules for businesses, especially entrepreneurs, new rules. Well, we've been forced to adapt things like a digital first sales process, both in B2B and B2C. We've had to deal with the great resignation, supply chain issues, the lack of labor, inflation, and the latest interest rate hikes and more. Now, perhaps we adapt and test new marketing and sales strategies that make it easier to bring in qualified leads. Perhaps we build a better culture that automatically attracts and retains talent. Or maybe we find other ways to add value so that we can increase our prices and our margins. But remember, in times of crisis and recession, like we saw in 2020, those times and these times, they're hardly new. In fact, what has emerged from all of history's dismal episodes is opportunity, innovation, and growth for those people who make the right decisions. See, here's what changes in a less than ideal economy, and here's where we look for good data that points us in the right direction. First, and I know a number of clients are here watching this, so you've heard us say this before, but buyers are more discerning. Now, this isn't a good or a bad thing, it's just the reality. In 2019, buyers looked at between 12 and 14 different sources of information before they make a buying decision. You think this has gone up or gone down over the past few years? Right. In 2020, that jumped up to 17. And then in 2021, the average number of the people looked at 27 different sources of information before making a buying decision. So think about that. We went from 12 to 14 all the way up to 27 different sources of information. Now, is this a function of lower disposable income? Was it increased costs? Was it a pessimistic outlook, or simply are people just so overwhelmed with options that they're having difficulty sorting out which company is best? Well, based on the data, it's actually a little bit of everything. So since we're dealing with a much more discerning customer, we're also dealing with someone who's unforgiving. If you or someone from your company makes a mistake, like having a bad sales pitch, not following up with prospects who don't buy, not re-engaging lost clients, not educating the buyer on why they're making a smart decision, not offering fresh perspectives, or not establishing a unique advantage point. Now, your punishment for failing to do this right is a list of, say, 15 to 20 competitors who will conduct themselves to the customer standard.
So, news alert, your buyers have become researchers. But, if we use that data as a barometer, our perspective on a less than optimal, economy changes. So when we're wanting to navigate the roller coaster, the Chicken Little kind of uncertainty that plagues a business during these kind of times, what the strategic entrepreneur will do is they'll put more energy into marketing and acquiring customers. They understand that growth is driven by an expanded customer base. And the fact that that most of the competition does the exact opposite is crazy. And it puts all their energy into stopping the bleeding. So they'll pull back on marketing and advertising, and they lay off their workforce. So they're only making it easier for you to capture more market share. But, there's more to do. There's more to this, right, than just growth.
And I'm glad you said that, Stephanie, because here's a fun fact. According to a study performed by the Kauffman Foundation on companies who made it to the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list, and I know several of you on today's call have been on the Inc. 5000, and several of you have been on it multiple times, and that's great. But fortunately, those of you who are on today's call, those that we know, you're building growth out of sustainability and predictability. But those who didn't, 66% of those companies went out of business, shrunk in size, or disadvantageously sold within 5 to 8 years of getting listed. Does that surprise anybody? Throw it in the chat. Does that surprise you? Look, it's fair to assume that most of these companies equated revenue growth to success, and that's all they looked at. Revenue growth to success. But clearly it wasn't enough to make their company sustainable over time. So in other words, rapid growth isn't a predictor of success. And if you want to succeed, you need your company to have sustainable growth, especially when the economy takes a turn for the worse, so to speak. Now, we see growth as a laser beam focus on revenue, where the notion that solid results are driven purely by hard work, you know, the hustle.
But really,
But
sustainable growth means that we're going to focus on predictability within a simple business model where results are driven by bulletproof systems and processes. So sustainability in your business happens not because of the number of new customers you can generate from, long hours of hard work, but how predictably, it's hard to say that word sometimes, predictably you can create demand. So in
Stephanie,
other words,
that's so powerful, Stephanie. Can I get you
yeah,
to repeat that one more time? Because
I'm
that is so
happy to
powerful.
repeat that. Sustainability in your business happens not because of the number of new customers you generate, from all the hard work, from all the long hours that you spend, but how predictably you can create demand. So, in other words, sustainability is driven by predictability.
So I want you to take an example of the CEO of a marketing agency that we started working with all the way back in 2015. Now, at the time, he was doing about $1 million in revenue and was looking to scale. The problem was that most of his revenue was dependent on word of mouth and referrals, and as well as in-person events. So as a result, he experienced some roller coaster revenues. Some months were up, some months are down. Plus, the company was very dependent on him. I mean, this person did everything all himself, did all the sales himself, plus managed the fulfillment of the services, set up technology, and so forth. But like many entrepreneurs, he was the proverbial cook, bottle washer, and everything in between. So in 2016, that's when we started working together. And his goal was to create sustainable growth in his business. So to level up the ups and downs, we began adding at least one new profit center a quarter, starting with an active referral program. Then we did outbound marketing, then pay-per-click, et cetera, et cetera. And by the end of that year, he went from 1 million to 2.5 million. Not bad, right? Not bad. But what we did is we optimized what was working. We systematized the process so that it's easier to scale and innovate by bringing in new profit centers. Then in 2017, he did 5.5 million. And then we continued. And in 2018, he did 16.05 million. Then in 2019, he did 24.1 million. And in 2020, in the worst economic crash in modern history, he did 27.18 million. In a period of just a few years working together, he went from 1 million to 27.18 million. And by the way, we're still working together and the numbers are even larger. The point is that his company created sustainable and predictable growth regardless of the economic conditions. Again, regardless of the economic conditions. Let's say he and I never met and his business in 2020 was the same as it was in 2016. At that point, he was so dependent on word of mouth and referrals and in live and in-person events, his pipeline very likely could have dried up and would have been dangerously close to going out of business. But because he built predictability and sustainability into his business, even when live events disappeared, the company continued to reach historic levels of success. And none of this happened by accident. It's all happening because of the stuff that we're talking about right now.
But what is the competition going to do when the market turns down again? Your competitors are going to tighten their belts. Your competitors are going to pull back on marketing and advertising. Your competitors are going to lower their prices, which means now they're operating on razor thin margins. Your competitors are going to stop doing what makes them money. So what does that mean for you? It means that opportunity is knocking. So they will have made it ridiculously easy for you to capture more market share. But how? How do you do it? Have a sustainable growth plan. So let's talk about that for a minute. There are three main pillars of sustainable growth. The first one, remove as much friction and human error as possible through systematization. That's another one. That's easy to say that 3 times fast. The second one is to educate the consumer on fulfilling a need that they didn't even know they had, so that they're going to pay premium pricing for what you offer. And then 3, create robustness in your profit centers. So my question for you is your business too dependent on you? Because sustainable growth requires productivity. And I don't mean, get an Aura ring. I mean putting systems and processes in place in your business that free you up to work on your business, not just in your business. So systematizing and streamlining processes also means that anyone with a baseline of skill can perform like a top performer. And that allows you to spend more time working on the business and studying, instead of getting all bogged down in the day-to-day minutia and the weeds. So if you're an entrepreneur, you've got a lot of things going on. You're wearing multiple hats. And in a down market, more things are happening that then take you away from your business. So, if you've ever seen a juggler, they can juggle 3 balls, no problem. But what about when they're juggling 10 balls? 10 balls are a lot more difficult. But what do you notice often happens when 1 ball drops? They all drop. And that's why you need systems and processes.
So a few years ago, I coached the CEO of an executive coaching company. And yes, I do coach my competition. And we ran a campaign that literally doubled her sales within 30 days. Now, this is a campaign that could have very easily optimized and been automated. But what happened? Because she failed to build the systems and the processes that Stephanie just talked about, she let other things get in the way and she never got around to running it again. Did it cost her hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions? I guess we're never going to know, but that's what happens when a ball gets dropped. And the more we look at our businesses, the more balls we find like that inadvertently get dropped. And we saw that in 2020. Those businesses that didn't have streamlined systems and processes in place wound up on their knees, scrambling to catch up and erasing any momentum that they might have enjoyed up until that point. Whereas those businesses that focused on building systems and building processes and set them up correctly, well, guess what? They ensured that things were followed and they enjoyed a certain level of robustness, which is key to sustainability and predictability. So how do you become the highest priced competitor in the market? Well, sustainable growth requires profitability. And that means one thing, becoming a must-have in the mind of your customer. Now, you want to be a must-have rather than a nice-to-have. Remember, consumers are more discerning. They're tightening their belts. The first thing they're going to cut out is the nice-to-have items, and then they prioritize the must-have items. Look, people, your competition in a changing a down environment, so to speak, is not just your direct competitors. If you're an agency, it's not just another agency, so to speak, or if you're, selling widgets, it's not just another widget. What it is your competition in a quote unquote bad economy is everybody looking for that one single dollar that they have available to spend. So you've got to ask yourself a question. You must obtain a competitive advantage and find a way to answer, why is my product or service a must-have, not a nice-to-have? And every product or service, regardless of the industry, has that opportunity to become a must-have.
So Apple did this in 2008. They launched the most expensive smartphone in the industry that they'd ever seen, and had people lining up the streets, sleeping in tents, and willing to put themselves in debt to buy this phone. Why? Because it was a must-have for them. It made them feel more productive and actually happier, smarter because they were upgrading from a dumb phone. But Apple's must have positioning was also coupled with the relationship that buyers have with the brand. So, when you do business with Apple, it's a transformative experience. I personally feel
Sure.
the same way. Everything from opening up that crisp, clean white box to the user experience to the Genius Bar and so many other things. It's not just a transactional experience.
100%, 100%. And this is important because even within the must-haves that we just talked about, if you don't offer a transformative relationship with your buyer, like Stephanie just talked about, and it's merely a transactional one, they're going to look at your products and services and they'll jump for somebody a dime cheaper. To become a must-have, you must also be able to offer a transformational type of experience. Now, kind of based on what we talked about just a few minutes ago, this may be helping the consumer to realize that there's a need that they didn't know they had, that truly taking the time to understand the most pressing concerns and discovering their unmet needs, it fosters a kind of trust necessary to become that must-have brand. Stephanie just mentioned it about, taking people from a dumb phone to a smartphone. They felt more productive, happier, they felt smarter. So where do you find the opportunities in the new normal? There's always a new normal, right? The new normal of 2020, and then I guess the new normal that's coming up. But sustainable growth requires a robustness in a company's profit centers. And to do that, it requires diversity. Now, most companies rely on word of mouth, referrals, and or maybe live events. But any sustainable growth model needs one new profit center a quarter. And that needs to be the focus, one new profit center a quarter. Now, whether that's one of the many different outbound strategies that you can use, or the inbound lead generation strategies, or partnership strategies, or any of these other things that we can teach you. There's literally hundreds of strategies that we have available to our clients, but all you really need is just one per quarter. Now, people thought networking and events would never end. Well, 2020 showed otherwise. And for those who are just waiting around for word of mouth and referrals, there's nothing worse than waiting around for that phone to ring. Because when the market changes, people are too worried about themselves to focus on making referrals. So even word of mouth and referrals suffers.
And predictability, that means developing multiple opportunities. So you want to do that because you want to mitigate the vulnerability of relying on just one primary source of income. So in the Predictable Profits Playbook that Charlie talks about, he talks about this concept of a money wheel. And what it means is the more spokes you have in the wheel, the more robust and predictable your revenue is. And as Charlie was talking about earlier, the best performing companies use a balanced approach of inbound and outbound marketing. So there's literally hundreds of strategies within each of these categories. Taking one strategy and committing to launching it every quarter brings you at least 4 new ways that you're generating traffic and leads and sales each year. And after 3 years, you've got 12 new ways to generate traffic, leads, and sales. And so this is super powerful because you'll find that when one strategy is lagging, oftentimes there'll be another strategy that takes off and leads.
Absolutely. So I actually want to finish off by telling you a bit of a story, and not just any story. I really want to hit home with this story so that by sharing something dramatic that happened in 2020, I want you to imagine right now that you owned an international travel business. And this is during a time when planes were grounded and countries' borders were closed. Governments literally restricted all travel. Literally, you couldn't even deliver the service that people were buying if you owned an international travel business. So what would you do? Well, this is exactly what happened to the CEO of Global Work and Travel. His name is Jürgen Himmelmann, one of the greatest men that I've had the opportunity to work with. Extraordinary individual. Now, he called me up and we're on Zoom. He's actually standing out in front of his parents' house. He's on his cell phone. His hair's all disheveled. And he asked me point blank, Charlie, am I out of business? So I looked at him and I replied, why would you say that? And he says, hey, man, my largest competitors are already going out of business because nobody can put people on a plane. And so I said, people, well, let me ask, are people still visiting your website? Are they still opening your emails? Are they still clicking on your links? And he's like, yeah. And I said, then Jürgen, this will be the best time in your life to be an entrepreneur. And it's funny because he looked at me and he goes, man, I tell you what, I've trusted you up to this point, but I'm thinking you didn't hear me. And he repeated his concerns. And I reiterated my conviction. And at this point, he's like, man, you must be smoking the wacky tobacco because you're out of your mind. But he had nothing to lose. And he didn't want to give up on his business that he just spent the last decade building. So he agreed for a minute just to play along. Now realize in 2020, global tourism suffered its worst year on record, with international arrivals dropping 74%. You can imagine what Jürgen was feeling during this time. And here's how it went down. He was focusing on the pillars of growth that we have just discussed. Now, Jürgen was stuck in Australia. He was unable to visit his offices in the UK and his offices out in North America. So instead, he focused on dialing in his systems and dialing in his processes. He focused on increasing his investment in e-commerce. And as a result of building more robustness into his organization, he could get more done with less resources. And he was becoming more efficient and more profitable. And he had his systems dialed in so well that he was able to eliminate 66% of his staff and get more done. He eliminated them because his systems and his processes were so effective. He was able to get more done with less people, boosting his profitability further. And rather than discount, when everything is, his competitors are going out of business and all this other stuff, he revised his messaging to better define the needs of what were unmet for his consumers, so that the needs that they didn't even realize that they had at the time. He offered extra service. He offered convenience. He offered high margin incentives. He offered a way for people to get excited, to look forward to have hope for when the pandemic was over. And the result, imagine this. He increased his prices not once, but twice during the pandemic as an international travel company. When people couldn't even get on a plane, they had to wait until the borders opened up. And he opened new business lines and increased his average customer value by 30 to 50%. You see, Stephanie talked about it earlier. Your competitors are going to pull back. They're going to pull back on their advertising. They're going to instantly lay off people. They're going to take their foot off the gas pedal and whatnot. Jürgen didn't do that. No. Instead, what he did is he leaned in. He leaned in and he opened new marketing channels, sometimes several within a quarter, not just one, but several within the quarter. And the result? 300% more business in North America. Globally, he shattered every previous sales record. He beat more sales in a day. He beat most sales in a week and most sales in a month in the middle of a pandemic when competitors were going out of business because they couldn't put people on a plane. So why do I tell you this? Because if he can do it in travel, in one of the hardest hit industries in the world, folks, you can do this in any business. Take Shama Hyder. She's the CEO of Zen Media and has spoken on nearly every major stage in the world. She's a best-selling author and one of the smartest people you're ever going to meet. And when 2020 hit and people weren't going to these big live events anymore, that's when she reached out to us to discuss different strategies for building a more robust pipeline. And within 90 days, her quarterly revenues surpassed the entire year's revenue from the year before, during a time when, again, the world was shut down. And in the same time, our coaches helped 3 other companies make it to the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies list. And there would have been a heck of a lot more if more people applied for it.
I love hearing about Jurgen. I always love hearing that story. So powerful. And our point and Charlie's point is that focusing on sustainable growth doesn't mean you won't have rapid growth, but growth by itself doesn't mean you'll have sustainability. And sustainability is going to be what ensures that your business doesn't flame out. And the secret to sustainability is predictability. Now I get it, we're just scratching the surface, but I know we're pushing up against the clock. We want to be super respectful of your time. And I want to remind you that, just because the media might call it a bad market, there's no such thing. It's an illusion. So, markets are neither good or bad. They're just different. And there's an opportunity for you in any market. And, again, I know that I promised you in the beginning that we'll have a way for you to be able to ask questions and to reach out to us. And if you'd like to see what opportunities exist in your business, reach out, schedule a complimentary coaching session with us. During this free session, we're going to look at your business. We're going to kind of take an X-ray view and we'll see what's happening. And we're going to talk about where you want to go and give you perspective on what's required to reach your financial goals. The session will last about 45 minutes long. And we found that many, many business owners have said that just one idea from that session made them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And that's just one idea. So please go to the link on the screen, schedule a time now. They're on a first come, first serve basis. And if there's no more times available, go ahead, save the link, and then check it back again tomorrow. Because sometimes we get cancellations, but as we all know, money likes speed. So please grab a time now while it's fresh on your screen. We'd love to chat with you.
So that wraps up today's presentation. Thank you for being here to discuss the future and how to turn a changing economy into one of the best opportunities you have to be in business. Again, on behalf of Stephanie and I, we appreciate you signing in. We're very grateful for your time. And I hope you learned that fear is just an opportunity waiting to explode. So again, my name is Charles Gaudet with my co-founder, Stephanie Vaughn. We hope to see you on a strategy session. And regardless, we hope you enjoyed today's presentation and hope this helps you create sustainable and more robust growth for your business. Again, thank you very much. And
yes, thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.